Okay, folks, as you would expect for the final session, this is a broad brush approach I'm going to take. It should be. It's not going to be detailed and structured. That's not criticism of anything you've had today. I think it's been fantastic. This owes a lot to the people who are sitting in this room. It owes something to staff that I work with in football. This is going to be primarily first team oriented, but not just that, because it's important to look at the entire spectrum, of course. And I hope there's going to be things in here that you'll disagree with, maybe even violently, and it'll provoke some thinking, and maybe some questions later. And there should be stuff in here, though, that you go, I'm not mad. I work in a mad place, that's football, but I'm relieved. I actually do know what I'm doing, so I'm hoping that that's going to be the experience. So as I say, that's what it's from. I think there's nothing much to pick out of that, except I was thinking about listening to people speaking today. We've got a huge range here of presentations in terms of level people have operated at. We've got sex differences, we've got level, we've got country, we've cultural differences, we've got male, we've got a whole range. You can split it. Sociologists were a fantastic time telling us that this is not one unified culture that we're talking about. And that's a paradox. So if you haven't heard that word too often, I want you to think about that word in relation to psychology, sports psychology, and even sport at large. Paradox is a key word, So we're working in something where you're looking for commonalities, you're looking for something that is joined up, that's coherent, but at the same time you're recognising massive individual differences. So let's start straight away with something. There will be people in this room who should never work in first team football, should never be near Premiership football at first team or any first team environment in any country. You're not made for it. It's not what you're about. It's not your skills, it's not your qualities, it's not your passion, it's not your love. And if I was doing this presentation to school teachers, I'd say exactly the same, except they'd probably take me out. You should be in primary school, because it's absolutely fundamental and massively important, and that's where you should be with your skills, your knowledge, your personality, your values. Absolutely. In fact, you should be paid probably more than the first team. So now we'll come back to the experiences that we've been hearing today. Mistakes that I've made loads of mistakes, and I hope you've made some of these mistakes. Why not? So the first team, those of you who've been in the first team world leaders, players, coaches, sports scientists, and I hope a few sports psychologists here, but there aren't many of you, because of some of the things we're going to talk about maybe in this presentation very quickly. You know it's not a bigger people version of the academy. It's radically different. It's radically different. You know all the reasons. I could take 4 hours and still couldn't even begin to touch the tip of the iceberg of how different this is. So it's hugely different. So let me just get this in right now. Do we actually educate and train our students sufficiently, given where the literature base is, to actually work in professional sport? Never mind professional football, never mind the Premiership in its particular unique demands. Just think about that one. Mental skills training will be the key. Will it hell? How can it be the key with world-class elite athletes in the biggest professional league in sport outside the States, perched here in England? It should be in Scotland, but it's in England. It's here. These people cannot get to this level without superb mental skills. Did I say perfect? I certainly didn't. Did I say that they do need to work on some mental skills at various times? Most certainly they do. But by definition, they've already got good mental skills at the top level. What we're talking about here is trying to accelerate that now through the academy system, through the processes we've been hearing about today. Wonderful, fantastic, accelerating. You don't lose so many people. You don't have so many players who've gone out the game because actually they didn't really acquire this. But that would be the first thing to say. The literature was saying this is going to be mental skills training. But it wasn't mental skills training for those of us who lasted in these buildings. We'll get on to how we lasted in the buildings in a minute. First team in this country, and in many countries of the world, but in this country here, particularly Premiership and Championship, is a multicultural experience. What does that mean? Another 5 hours we could do on that. It's huge. Here's something straight away. It means you're going to work with players whose religious and spiritual values are radically important to their identity. That's a radical challenge to most people in the Western world, and certainly in Western Europe. It's coming up. It's going to impact on what they think psychology is, what they think they're actually doing as professional footballers, how they relate to people. Just one. Just one. There's loads more there. Diet, food, and all that. Forget those. They're commonplace. Think of the deeper issues that it faces you with. I think that's more valuable for those of us who spent time, certainly at first team level. It turns out that areas of mainstream psychology that have been overlooked to some degree by sports psychologists, I think, I've been doing this now 30 years, so I can say this, the people 10 years, 15 years older than me were not trained sufficiently broadly in psychology. They had PE backgrounds, many of them, and they're very bright people and did some great stuff. They were first off the mark, but they avoided an awful lot of work here because it doesn't look scientific. Remember that one now? It doesn't look scientific. Knowledge, skills, and you. Right in the morning, Christian mentioned that straight away in the morning. He talked about, actually, you better reverse that. Whether you're working in academies, whether you're working where Fran was, down in a very brutal world, or whether you're working at first team in the Premiership world. Reverse it. It's going to be about you. Staying in the building more than 2 or 3 hours, we know so many sad cases of people who are out the building within a week and have fantastic skills, tremendous knowledge. We've got first from even good universities like here, some from Loughborough, out the building because they don't know who they are, because they don't work with the supervisors to work on this aspect. This is crucial because you are the tool as much as the message in our discipline. It's been said today. We don't have bells and whistles. If we have those bells and whistles, go and send us to S&C. Send us somewhere else. We're about something that's more personal. Sorry, let's come back to that in a minute. So I don't think university courses do prepare us adequately for this. We have placements here at John Moores. They're nowhere near good enough. Zoe's looking at me now. They're nowhere near good enough. It's nothing to do with Zoe. It's nothing to do with the system per se. They're not fit for purpose for people going into professional sport, and they're definitely not fit for purpose going into professional football. But that's an opportunity, isn't it? So that was a mistake. It's like, this will be good enough. No, it's not good enough. It causes so many of the problems in terms of reading the context. We've had that one so many times today. Transitions, garbage. Not transitions. That's smooth. That's close to the Latin word, isn't it? Transmission. They're not transmissions, smooth transitions. They're not smooth. They're brutal. And they don't happen at the end of your career. They happen all the time. Footballers are getting dropped every 5 seconds. And as coaches would say, if they don't care about it, show them the door. They care deeply about it because they're passionate about it, because it means a lot to them, and so it should. So look at those moments. What a mistake. It turns out transitions were not really what was happening. It was critical moments, loads of anxiety, loads of adversity being dropped, released, cut. Look at that word, sold. I've never worked in a world where it gets sold. I'm an academic. They don't sell us, they should, but they don't. How many worlds? Think about it now. How many worlds do you know where people get sold? That's pre-Wilberforce in Britain. That's slavery. That's a powerful word. They get sold. No, they don't. They move to a better club. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. So the brutality of this, that's first team we're talking about now, isn't it? Has an impact in terms of the type of psychology work I think you're going to do. Okay, let's just move on a little bit quicker. Oh, job. I think theory that you need is theory that actually you know well enough so you can speak in the language of the everyday. Because I'm not patronising football, I'm not patronising staff, but words count. We need to know our words in theory precisely so that we can actually translate them into English or whatever your language is. No psychobabble. It's caused real problems. It's taken us out so often. So it means know your theory really well so you can actually use the right words. Got a great book coming in a minute. I've got a plug. It's not mine. It's not mine. I think research is behind the field. Loads of reasons for that. And the history of our field. I mean, it's a soft target to say that. I think it is. And I will plug now. Therefore, don't get hung up in research articles. The practicing psychologists here, all of us, should be reading books. That's from our parent discipline. That being psychology. Well, and some sports psychology as well. So don't get hung up in research articles. Another little one, random one. Staff in first team environments. So I've worked with a number of clubs, worked with lots of players over the last 25 years. I thought the staff, particularly the British staff this is, I've got the profiles, the psychometric profiles, I'm not going to reveal them because it wasn't research, really impulsive, crazy, mad, wild, this is the British ones. That's not what it says in psychological language, of course, it says something much more psychological than that. And I was surprised that the overseas players, particularly with the British ones as well, were into detail, were cautious, were introverted, course they were paying the world-class athletes. I didn't say all of them, did I? There's Jimmy Bullock. I didn't say all of them. But these guys here are into detail because of the world that they operate in. So we've got some real challenges. Think what that means in a minute. Psychology is pretending science. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's not natural science. It's not physics. So stop pretending it. It's physics. It's human science. It draws on scientific principles and it has to face free will. So when the coaches give you a hard time and say, it's not science, you're not scientists, go, that's right, we're not. We're human scientists. And then they'll disappear, of course. So psychology has got a real problem in academia and also in the world outside professional sport and football in particular. I think we need to be able to talk about it in a way that is empirically correct. And then it turns out mad things. This is mine. It's not mine. This is the one I borrowed. It turns out that some of the deeper things that you will read that sound as if they're a long, long way away from your practice will turn out when you read them a little bit more to be really, really valuable. And the reason I think that's valuable is existential phenomenological psychology, which is European, translated by the Americans, uses words like suffering, sacrifice, courage, identity, choice, responsibility, authenticity. All those words you're familiar with, they came from there. And I think that type of language connects really strongly to the lived experience of staff, of all types of staff, and players' performance. So the little message there would be, go deep, go really deep. We need some superficial American stuff, but go beyond that. Go beyond that, because that material will give you something so you can sit beside the medical doctor and you've got some real depth. So that you've actually got something that is worthy of your qualifications. The rest of the time they may think that what you're talking about is pure common sense that everybody knows. So I'm arguing here for depth of theory, real depth, you choose what it is, so you sound like a true professional, whether your masters, your PhDs, your basic accreditation, whatever it happens to be. Absolutely necessary to do what we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, we're all to blame. So why is sports psychology taking so long? Why is it taking so long to get to this point now? Because it has taken a long time in the richest, biggest sport. How come? We're to blame in the universities. We're to blame for sometimes using language and terminology and being unreal and abstract and wordy and not translating that in a way that's meaningful to the people we're going to work with. Absolutely key. Doesn't mean don't be deep. It means they'll come out of that to something that's meaningful. And I think that on the other side has been great fear. We've heard about today what it actually means, what it doesn't mean. Measurable. At the academy level, this is much easier to do. We've been hearing about it today. Absolutely legitimate. At first team, this is trite. I don't care. The measurement of are you any good as a sports psychologist? The first team is are you in the building next week? That's it. And if you're in the building the week after, bloody good. And if you lasted a few years, you're very lucky and good. And you go, that's easy to say. Really? Well, where are they all then? Where are they? 25 years later, where are the sports psychologists then all over the first team in the richest sport outside of America, where everybody says the psychological factor is absolutely key at the highest level? Where are they? So they're to blame, and we are to blame. And I think the measurement issue is a problem. And quick fix. Be careful that you don't, and we haven't, it's getting better. We were perceived as quick fix people. That's moving away. Don't do it. Don't do it, or that's how they'll see you. That's a disaster, except now and again you don't have to do it. Just now and again. Just keep your job. Just to make sure you can do some work down the line with this person who you know needs something a bit deeper. 10,000 hours? What garbage in this silly book that we wrote, 10,000 hours. So Chris went to Barcelona. He asked them, we spoke. It wasn't research. It's another plug for don't just read research. Chris went. I didn't. Chris knows them. He went to Barcelona and said, what is it? And they went, between 3,000 and 4,000. Ericsson was talking about playing pianos. The 3,000 to 4,000 were 10,000. Of course, the kids are spending 17,000 in their bed thinking about football and other things. But that's not in there. So, data. There's never been more data in technology than ever. Every day it grows. The key to the psychologists are ask questions about the value of the data. The value, not to avoid data, but ask really. That is more important in your job now than ever. Particularly in a first team environment or a top club environment where you could have 30, 40, 50 staff who are natural science, sports science / coach staff. who are thinking data will provide answers. Our job is to put your hand up and go, what for? Why? What does that say? What's the purpose of that? Be careful when you ask that question. What a disappointment, this book, when this Poxy book came out in 2010, one of the first persons to comment, I'd love to say, one of the first persons to comment on it said, what an outrageous disappointment after all those years, 10 years in the Premier League, doing fine work. And this is what he's written about. Where's the visualisation? Where's the goal setting? Where's the deep breathing? It's like, no, it was his first team. We didn't decide, the four of us who contributed to this book, I had the job of writing it, we didn't decide what was in it. This was decided by the managers and staff at these clubs who said, you will not be doing one-to-one work. You will be doing an organisational psychology role to build the culture between my sports science and coaching staff. Because as we've just been hearing today, academic and first team, these people are not exactly the same people, even though they're doing the same thing. Get them to work together. You've got people here on this side who think that anybody who's got any decent grammar and can put 3 sentences together is deeply suspect. You've got people over here who have the opposite view, questioning these people here who can barely speak, even though they've been in the game for 25 years. And be simplistic. Bring these groups together. Bring these departments together. How did you come up with that, Mark? I didn't. Mike Ford, and 2 or 3 other people were told by staff, senior staff, that's your job, first team, number one, that's your job. Then you might get round to doing some effective work, well, it's one-to-one. Let me put it more brutally. If the culture's shit, what is the point in doing one-to-one work? Culture first. Grow it, develop it, improve it, and then again, because you never get there. So that was the lesson, culture first. Not in the way that sociology is good, but in a practical way. So that book was about that. Then one-to-ones with staff and players. This is not sequential. Of course, it keeps going all the time. You don't fix the culture and then walk out of the building. It's constant work on culture. Then one-to-one players and staff as performers. Don't miss the staff as performers. Not so they can deliver psych stuff like we've been hearing, which is brilliant, but confidential sessions, one-to-one with these people, particularly first team, particularly in England, particularly in the Premier League, who are going to get taken out if they have 5 or 6 defeats. That's tough. They need one-to-one support if they're up for it, and it's valuable. You can do it. Built up with staff, yeah, lovely stuff, more traditional kind of stuff, from organisational psychology stuff. Is that a job you want to do? Are you ready to do it? Why should you let sports science people do it with physiology backgrounds? Why shouldn't it be us with psychology backgrounds? If that is the opportunity, if there's no PD, if there's no performance director in the club, you do it. Don't let the physios do it. They're a nightmare. Actually, the physios are really good, but that's another story. And then the silly stuff, you must be doing loads of silly stuff, taking them out to the army and eating mud and dangling off ropes and all that. Yeah, that's the kind of crap that psychologists do. No, it's not. It's the last shit you should be doing. But you should be doing it, particularly when the gaffer says do it. But it's the last stuff you should be doing. But it is good, though, to Spanish guys understand that the British are mad and that they do a bit of drinking at night and they'll have 2 little glasses and they've got 3 days in the legs. Do it. Brings human beings together. Brings everybody down. Fantastic. Don't make that your job. Don't make that a job, because that's been the job of some people. And if you're presenting to the players, in my experience, if you're presenting to the players at first team level, next week you're probably about to get the sack. Because you should never be speaking to the players when it's asked. And maybe you might get a minute or 2. Certainly in a British context. This is not Denmark. You can't speak to people nicely here. Who are you? Who the hell are you? You're no one. If you're an academic, for heaven's sake, realise how suspect you are. Last thing to be doing. Can't be doing it, the last thing. So that's a lesson, isn't it? That's like revolved upside down. Well, I think in the first team, the manager, oh, this has caused so much trouble. Can we have some respect for our first team staff and coaches? They are brilliant psychologists. Not perfect. There's things they need to learn and improve. But these people, by definition, if they've got a track record, are good psychologists. How did they acquire it? Like the rest of the human race, by living, reflecting, breathing, making mistakes and going, do not treat the French guys that way. Well, whatever it may be, you do not patronise them. No wonder we've had trouble. Academics coming out patronising them. Don't patronise them. You need to know your material so well that you hold fire till you've got something to say that can help. Slow immersion, gentle immersion, really uncomfortable stuff. Those of you who've done it, it's awful. You're dying to do stuff. You're dying to get in and show you can do stuff. Don't. Less is more. Resist, less is more. That hurts. That's why you need supervisors to check you're not going mad. Less is more. Okay, confidential sessions. First team, all my sessions, 250 plus, always confidential. That means totally confidential. Where are you with confidentiality? You need to express it immediately. Mine has been, unless you're looking that you need a referral for mental illness issues, unless you're doing something illegal, it's fully confidential. I may try and encourage you to speak to coaches and other people to bring this out, the sports science staff, but ultimately it stays in here between you and me, because it's basically you doing the work. I'm not telling you, particularly if you're a senior player, particularly if you're a Premiership player, I'm not telling you, I'm drawing out of you. I'm challenging you, I'm being provocative. What's on the table? Everything's on the table. Everything they decide impacts performance is on the table. It's not lifestyle. What is this lifestyle stuff? Stop it. Academy, fine. But if you're going further up, everything impacts performance. Everything. So I want my sports psychologists to be interested in everything that may impact performance. Therefore, that might have implications for your reading, might have implications for our development as a profession. Martin thinks it's one of the best things I've ever done, and it probably is the only thing I've actually done. Should you go full-time in these worlds? If you go full-time at the academy, I think you can do a fantastic job. Some of you here have been doing that. You can be immersed in it, because confidentiality might be different. Maybe you've got huge strength by being in but not in, by being there but not there, by being someone that people will confide in, because people do make judgments. So I would say here, unless someone's going to tell me at the break on the pub tonight, don't have a full-time sports psychologist at first team unless they're doing the PD organisational side job. If they're doing one-to-ones with the first team staff, including the manager and the players, one-to-one, keep them part-time. Whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4 days, make sure they've got some space to be away. And not least, the final piece is that allows them to say in a staff meeting, by the way, guys, this is crap. Because they don't care about getting sacked, because they can come back to the university, hello, or they can go somewhere else. So real value in a psychologist is actually having other consultancy or other employment opportunities so they can actually speak truth to power. Speak truth to power. You might get it wrong, tough shit. If they like you, you've been around a bit, and they can see you doing it for the right reason, you stay in the building. If it's not pure ego, you're there to speak truth to power in different ways. Okay, work through the staff. Daniel, we've got, what, we've got 5 minutes? -5. Okay. That picture, Martin, might use it. It's always about performance, isn't it? I don't sound, that psychology is about anything else. It's ultimately about performance in this environment. But we had a massive debate, didn't we, about this? Why did we waste time on this? This was mad. 2 sets of academics wasting loads of time, and you go into the football world and they go, what are you talking about? It's always performance and well-being, or performance and caring. The human being is the athlete athlete's the human being. What are you doing? So I'm sure that doesn't happen in the applied world, but in the universities they've had loads of raging debate about it. How can that be the case? That has implications for practice. That has implications for how broad and holistic you go. And ultimately we're about this. Let's just cut to the chase on this. Any coaches in the room? Tough luck. You're the same. How do you prove as coaches that you really impact performance? Well, I know the best ones do. But just because I can't measure it precisely the way I can biochemistry does not mean it's not happening. Don't pretend you're biochemists, because we're not. Opportunities, I've got 2 slides to go. Brilliant, isn't it? There's loads of frauds and gurus left on the ground. Brilliant, there's loads out there. I mean, you've got loads of stories. Let's talk about them in the pub, those of you later. You must have some horror stories. I've got to quickly tell you one. How do you deal with being in place 2 years and the chief executive brings in his mate, who's a kind of psychologist, who does a session with first team players, 17 internationals, on the power of love over hate. You must love scoring. Dr. Nesti sitting in the corner will agree, won't you, Dr. Nesti? I was sitting like Jacob Rees-Mogg, must be down. You must hate losing. Isn't that right? Because love is more powerful than hate. Good doctor? Yes, it is. It's the end of me forever, surely. There's loads of these tossers out there. The opportunity is there. These are charismatic ex-cons. Brilliant. We'll say this for fun. I was once, I have to say who it was, big name, fantastic ex-player, manager, who said, Mark, it's great having you here. Do you tell lots of jokes? No. The last psychologist said, brilliant. He should have been on the stage. He was so funny. You know these guys are out here. They've got certain qualities. Take them out, will you? Next 25 years, take them out. Psych factors becoming even more key. We know they are. The quality of the players. The whole process they're going through, everybody's talking about psychology. How wonderful. Owners and chief executives want return on their investment. They're looking down the line going, you can't just scream and bawl at players. That old-fashioned industrial British approach has gone, sawed off. There's too much at stake. You need to be more subtle, so they're interested. Books and chapters, like this brilliant book here, Performance Psychology, working with counter-terrorism, just out today by one of our presenters, Martin Langegaard. He'd never do this. I'm doing it for him. He doesn't care. Read widely in performance areas. Magnificent. Do it. Stuff the articles. Let's see the universities start writing stuff that really connects empirically more often than they are doing at the moment. I'm finished. 3 weeks' time, so I'm going to say this. I want my money back. And I'm actually getting paid to do this. EPPP, non-licensed strike, isn't that brilliant in the UK? That's wonderful because it's going to bring it right through. We have academy players and staff who understand it's normalised. They understand that this is not all the difficulties we've had to surmount. We've got a mental ill health crisis in the Western world at the very least. That's sad and terrible. We've all got views on that. We can't talk about that now. That's another opportunity. That most certainly is for us. Ours and our colleagues in clinical psych and elsewhere. The social class mix is much more healthy in football. You speak to some of the old coaches and they go, I don't like it. They've got ideas, these buggers. I don't like it. They say things. I don't like it at all. I'm not happy. It's like, no, it's nice though. It's like the other sports I've had. A whole mix of kids who were pretty good at school and kids who wanted to burn the school down, all together. Lovely challenges. Friends from abroad. This is, I was nearly finished now. Thank you, friends from abroad. How brilliant to have friends from abroad coming into England. This is not a Brexit issue. Friends from abroad coming in and asking for a more cerebral approach, a slightly slower approach, a less frantic approach, a more thoughtful approach. And our British staff and players benefiting mostly from that uncomfortable experience. Thank you very much. And this is from the 1930s. This is in the 1930s. W.H. Auden, poet laureate, one of the great English poets. He said in the 1930s, I know there's a lot of it, but he said, we are living, he wasn't referring to that, he said we're living in an age of anxiety. When you read his work, he's talking about identity crisis. I'm leaving it there. Thank you.